The crimson sun of Aurelia 9 cast long shadows across the abandoned terraforming station. Cyrus Loren adjusted his oxygen mask, its filters wheezing against the thin atmosphere. The moon's surface stretched before him, a wasteland of rusted pipes and half-built biodomes, monuments to human ambition gone cold. He moved through the debris field methodically, scanning for salvageable tech with his worn detection device. A faint pulse registered on his screen. Organic. Weak. Dying. His first instinct was to ignore it. Probably some local fauna caught in the remnants of old atmosphere scrubbers. But the signal grew stronger, matching known life forms in his database. Against his better judgment, Cyrus altered course toward the source. The ravine opened up suddenly, nearly swallowing him whole. At its bottom, twisted metal reflected the dying sunlight. Apport. Escape class. The signal emanated from within. Inside, a figure lay crumpled against the pilot's seat. Humanoid, but wrong somehow. Her skin shifted between deep purple and sickly gray, reacting to ambient temperature. Pregnant. Very pregnant. Blood and other viscous fluids pooled beneath her. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing pupilless orbs that seemed to drink in what little light remained. She tried to speak, but only managed a wet cough. Her mouth moved again, forming words in a language Cyrus didn't understand. But her meaning was clear enough. Help me. The scanner in his glove painted a grim picture. Multiple fractures, severe dehydration, internal hemorrhaging, labor contractions already beginning. She had hours at most, minutes more likely. Memories crashed over him. Another woman, another desperate situation, his hands covered in blood, begging forgiveness as the light faded from her eyes. The corporate investigation that followed. The blame. The exile. I can't, he whispered, backing away from the pod. Not again. But those eyes held him. Alien though they were, he recognized the primal fear, the desperate need to protect something more important than oneself. And somewhere in their depths, he saw forgiveness for what he hadn't yet refused. The pod's emergency beacon began chirping. A message scrolled across its damaged display. Specimen 4RIA. Collection scheduled termination. Fetus non viable. Disposal authorized. Non viable. They'd thrown her away like defective equipment. Left her to die because something was wrong with her child. Cyrus's hands moved before he could stop them, activating the pod's manual release. The woman, Rhea, apparently, slumped forward into his arms. Her skin was hot to the touch, fever burning through her system. Hold on, he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand. Just hold on. The journey back to his biodome was a nightmare of shifting weight and treacherous footing. Rhea slipped in and out of consciousness, her body convulsing with barely controlled contractions. Twice, he nearly lost his footing on the slick volcanic rock. Each time, her fingers tightened reflexively around his arm, a reminder that 2 lives depended on his success. His dome came into view as the first of Aurelia 9's frequent storms rolled in. The structure had seen better days, patched and repatched with salvage materials, but held atmosphere, temperature, and gravity close to Earth standard. It would have to be enough. Inside, Cyrus laid Rhea on the medical cot he'd cobbled together from shuttle seats and reinforced foam. Her condition had deteriorated during transport. The purple of her skin had deepened to almost black, her breathing labored and irregular. Lights to medical protocol, he commanded. The dome's aged AI responded sluggishly, adding a sickly yellow tint to the standard white illumination. His medical supplies were limited, standard first aid, antibiotics, pain relievers. Nothing designed for alien physiology. Rhea's back arched suddenly, a silent scream tearing from her throat. Her pupils constricted to pinpricks, then dilated to consume her entire eye. Whatever was happening inside her was unlike anything in human obstetrics. He grabbed his scanner, trying to make sense of the readouts. Heart rate. No, 2 heart rates, one nested within the other. Temperature fluctuating wildly. Blood chemistry completely outside normal parameters. The child was positioned correctly, at least. But Rhea's body seemed to be fighting its own delivery. Thunder rumbled through the dome's reinforced walls. The atmospheric storm would ground any potential rescue or pursuit, buying them time. But it also meant he was alone with this impossible task. "Talk to me," he said, gently gripping her hand. "I know you can't understand, but tell me what you need." To his surprise, she responded. Fevered words spilled from her lips in alien cadence. While he couldn't translate the language, the meaning crystallized through context. Pain, fear, the child must live, must survive what we could not. And beneath it all, thank you for not leaving me. The storm intensified, rattling the dome's framework. Cyrus worked frantically, guided by instinct and fragments of his terminated medical training. He administered saline, hoping her body would process it. Pain relief was a gamble, but he couldn't let her suffer as she was. Hours blended together. Ria's contractions grew stronger, her exotic physiology displaying phenomena that bordered on the supernatural. Bioluminescent veins traced patterns beneath her skin. The air itself seemed to shimmer around her during each contraction, as if reality struggled to maintain cohesion. "Come on," Cyrus whispered, sweat dripping into his eyes. "You've come this far. Don't give up now." A particularly violent contraction brought Ria halfway to sitting. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, language barriers dissolved. He saw the steel determination that had kept her alive through abandonment and near death. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting. The baby crowned, and Cyrus nearly dropped his tools in shock. The child's skin was translucent, veins visible like a circuit board beneath the surface. But it wasn't merely alien biology that stopped him cold. It was the child's unusual coloration, a shimmering blend of purple and green that seemed to shift like oil on water. "It's happening," he said, positioning himself. "It's actually happening." Ria gave one final, Herculean push. The child emerged in a rush of fluids that smelled of ozone and copper. For 3 terrifying seconds, it lay motionless and silent. Then, a cry pierced the air, high-pitched and musical, like crystalline bells. "Kale!" Ria gasped, reaching for a child. The name carried across species, maternal love requiring no translation. Cyrus placed the baby in her arms, marveling at the tiny fingers grasping at air. But his relief was short-lived. Ria had gone deathly still, her skin fading to ashen gray. The childbirth had pushed her beyond her limits. "No," he said, checking her pulse. "No, no, no. You made it. You can't leave him now." He worked furiously, applying pressure to bleeding, administering stimulants, anything to keep her conscious. The baby, Kale, began to wail more urgently, as if sensing his mother's distress. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Just when Cyrus was about to give up, Ria's eyes fluttered open. She smiled weakly and lifted one hand to touch Kale's face. The baby quieted immediately, his own skin color shifting to match his mother's. First purple, then a healthier lavender hue. "Okay," Cyrus breathed, sinking to the floor. "Okay, we did it." The immediate crisis had passed, but new challenges loomed. Ria was weak, requiring constant monitoring. Kale displayed unique needs. His body temperature fluctuated dramatically, and he seemed to feed not through traditional means, but by absorbing certain wavelengths of light. More concerning was the signal. The pod's beacon, which Cyrus had hastily disabled, had transmitted long enough to paint a target on their location. Someone would come looking, someone who wanted Kale dead and Ria disposed of. Over the following days, as Ria regained strength, they found ways to communicate. Basic gestures, drawings in the dust, eventually, broken phrases in each other's languages. The full horror of her story emerged. She had been recruited from her homeworld, Zora Prime, under the pretense of cultural exchange. Instead, she became part of an experimental breeding program. Her genetic material combined with human DNA to create hybrid offspring. Kale was the 37th attempt. The previous 36 had been terminated in utero when genetic abnormalities were detected. But Kale showed no defects. His non-viable status came from a different source. He was too perfect, a true hybrid, capable of bridging the gap between species. Corporate sponsors saw this as a threat to their carefully maintained interstellar hierarchies. They would have harvested him, Rhea said, her English improving daily. Taken his genetic code, destroyed the source. Cannot allow bridge between worlds. Cyrus shared his own history. How he'd been a respected terraformation specialist until Helena, his partner, had fallen during an accelerated project timeline. Corporate had pushed for results, cutting corners on safety. When Cyrus blew the whistle, they buried him, professionally and personally. Aurelia 9 became his exile. "We are both ghosts," Rhea observed, watching Kale sleep peacefully between them. Running from same machine. The comparison struck deep. Different species, different circumstances, but victims of the same system that prioritized profit over people, or whatever term encompassed Rhea's people. As Rhea healed, they worked together to fortify their position. The biodome's defenses were basic, designed to keep local atmosphere out, not invaders. They rigged early warning systems from salvage parts, created false echo signatures to confuse scanners, and most importantly, built a bond that went beyond survivor's necessity. Kale thrived, displaying abilities neither fully human nor Zoran. He could manipulate his skin color at will, a trait his mother explained was usually developed in adolescence. His eyes could focus on multiple spectrums of light simultaneously. Most remarkably, he seemed to emit a calming energy that soothed both his parents during stressful moments. 3 weeks after the birth, detection alarms finally activated. A ship materialized through the electromagnetic haze, sleek, black, clearly military in design. Cyrus and Rhea gathered Kale between them, prepared for whatever might come. The ship's hailing frequency crackled through the biodome's ancient speakers. "Cyrus Lauren, exit the facility. Surrender the specimen and any genetic material. Compliance ensures minimal consequences." Rhea's hand found his. "They will never stop hunting," she said quietly. "Always more ships, more agents. Unless what?" Her smile was fierce. "Unless we make them believe we dead." All three. The plan was desperate, but simple. They had one advantage, Kale's unique physiology. Like his mother, he could temporarily suppress his life signs to near zero. Rhea could do the same, the technique a survival skill from their harsh homeworld. Cyrus, lacking this ability, would have to play dead the hard way. They manipulated the biodome's environmental controls, lowering temperature and filtering atmosphere. To external sensors, it would read as catastrophic system failure. Cyrus administered himself a carefully calculated dose of sedatives, enough to slow his heart rate to barely detectable levels without actually killing him. The black ship scanned their location for hours. Eventually, boredom or protocol won out. The ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only disturbed dust devils and unanswered questions. When Cyrus regained consciousness hours later, Rhea was there, Kale held close to her chest. Both wore expressions of profound relief. "It worked," he croaked. "For now," Rhea agreed. "But they may return. Verify death. Then we make ourselves invisible. Slowly, carefully, until they forget we ever existed." The months that followed were the hardest, and somehow the best, of Cyrus's life. They transformed the biodome from a refuge to a home. Rhea shared knowledge of Zoran botany, introducing resilient plant species that could thrive in Aurelia 9's harsh soil. In return, Cyrus taught her earth agriculture techniques. They created a garden. Actual growing things, not just the minimal ration Cyrus had maintained for survival. Still roots spread like purple ivy across the dome walls. Pharaoh leaves unfurled in impossible geometric patterns, their seeds containing nutrients both humans and Zorans could process. Kale grew at an alarming rate, already showing signs of early intelligence. He would babble in musical tones that made the plants lean toward him, as if responding to a language Cyrus and Rhea couldn't hear. His first steps were accompanied by a shower of bioluminescent particles from his skin, a trait Rhea explained happened when her people experienced pure joy. "He will never know your world or mine," Rhea said one evening, watching Kale explore the garden. He makes his own. Maybe that's not such a bad thing, Cyrus replied. Both our worlds have sharp edges. True words. They built routines. Rhea taught Kale traditional Zorn meditation, though she had to invent child-friendly versions. Cyrus shared human lullabies, their melodies taking on new harmonics when Kale joined in with his musical vocalizations. They learned each other's customs, created new ones unique to their small family. Rhea's people marked births with gardens, so they planted a tree for Kale, a hybrid species cross-pollinated from earth maple and Zorn silverleaf. It grew stronger than either parent strain. The outside world continued to exist, occasionally reminding them of its presence through intercepted communications. The corporation that had hunted them made public declarations about the failure of their hybrid program, explaining away loose ends with bureaucratic efficiency. Rhea and Kale became statistics, numbered among assets lost due to unforeseen complications. But within their dome, life flourished. Cyrus discovered he excelled at childcare, his methodical engineering mind adapting to the chaotic logic of toddler needs. Rhea developed unexpected laughter, a sound like singing metal that made Cyrus's heart race every time. They talked about the future. Should they always hide? Was there a way to build bridges between species without corporate oversight? Rhea spoke of other refugees like her, trading information through back channels, seeking safety among the stars. Perhaps, she mused, when Kale older, we find others. Build community. The corporations fear connections most. A year after his birth, Kale took his first steps into the biodome's converted atrium, where sunlight filtered through reinforced crystal. His baby laugh echoed off the walls, followed by his excited babbling in his unique hybrid language. Cyrus and Rhea sat together, watching their son explore with fearless curiosity. Their hands intertwined naturally now, fingers learning the contours of palm and knuckle through countless touches of comfort and support. Strange, Cyrus said. I came here to die slowly, found a reason to live instead. And I came discarded, Rhea replied. Now I choose my own purpose. Kale paused in his exploration, looking back at his parents with eyes that held depths of awareness beyond his months. He smiled, an expression that bridged every gap between worlds, and continued his adventure into the sunlit garden they had built together. The biodome held them in its transparent embrace, safe from the vacuum beyond its walls, nurturing roots that ran deeper than genetics or species. Outside, Aurelia 9's storms would continue to rage. Inside, 3 hearts beat in harmonious rhythm, creating family from choice rather than circumstance. In the distance, the hybrid tree they had planted for Kale's birth reached tendrils toward the dome's ceiling, its leaves shimmering with colors that existed nowhere else in the universe. Like their small family, it was something entirely new, a bridge between worlds that refused to be torn down. And in that moment, surrounded by growing things and warming soil, Cyrus Loren understood that salvation often arrived on the wings of the very thing you feared most to lose. The story of the alien woman who fell from the stars, the exiled engineer who refused to let her die, and the child who would grow to bridge worlds remained unwritten in any official record. But in the living green heart of Aurelia 9's forgotten dome, their tale bloomed eternal, a legacy of love planted in defiance of those who would see it burn to ash. Time moved differently in their sanctuary. Months blended into seasons marked not by planetary rotation, but by Kale's developmental milestones. His first word, a melodic blend that meant both home and safe in the language he was creating. His first drawing, concentric circles that Rhea recognized as a Zoran blessing of protection. His first question that neither parent could fully answer. Why sky no open? The boy had grasped something fundamental about their existence that even his parents sometimes struggled to accept. Their freedom was bounded by the transparent walls that kept them alive. But Kale didn't see it as limitation. To him, the biodome was infinite, containing all the universe he needed. They established contact patterns that kept them invisible to orbital scans but allowed for cautious observation of the outside world. Cyrus had modified an old deep space array to listen passively. No transmission traces to mark their location. Through these whispers of electromagnetic radiation, they learned the galaxy continued spinning without them. Wars, alliances, corporate mergers, technological advances, and occasionally rumors of other assets gone missing from various experimental programs. Proof, perhaps, that their choice to vanish had been the right one. More like us, Rhea interpreted from garbled communications, finding own paths, making their own meanings. The thought brought both comfort and anxiety. Safety in numbers, but also increased risk of discovery if others weren't as careful. When Kale reached his second year by Earth standards, they faced their first serious challenge since hiding. The boy was growing too fast, his hybrid metabolism requiring resources beyond what their limited garden could provide. More critically, he needed interaction with others of his kind, though defining what his kind meant presented its own challenges. He is bridge, Rhea reminded Cyrus during late-night discussions. But bridges connect. We isolate him to save him. Is this right? The question haunted them. They had saved Kale's life, but were they limiting it? The boy showed no signs of distress, adapting to his environment with remarkable resilience. But they recognized the projection in that observation. Of course, he seemed content. He knew nothing else. Their garden provided solutions to some problems. Cross-breeding experiments yielded protein-rich fungi that could sustain Kale's higher caloric needs. Cyrus rigged a low-power frequency modulator that produced audio patterns simulating social interaction, helping develop the boy's communication skills. But physical stimulation remained an issue. Kale was strong, hybrid vigor manifesting in muscles that consistently surprised both parents. He would spend hours climbing the dome support structures, treating his home as a vertical playground that gave Cyrus continuous anxiety. He climbs like my brother did, Rhea reminisced one evening, watching Kale scale the power conduit housings. Before the taking, she rarely spoke of her family. The subject brought shadows to her expressive eyes, colors shifting towards cloudy grays. But as their son grew, more memories surfaced. Details of her homeworld, the music her mother sang, the way her father taught patience through sand painting. Tell me, Cyrus encouraged, recognizing the need to preserve heritage. Zora Prime is Red World, she began, absently running fingers through Kale's fine hair. 3 moons in different orbits. Night comes in stages, each moon coloring sky differently. We weave stories with sand and song. My family, we were sound sculptures, creating shapes from vibration alone. Sound sculptures? Imagine, making melody visible, painting with rhythm. It was art form my people developed over millennia. Corporations called it primitive expression when they came. The bitterness in her voice held galaxies of loss. Cyrus had glimpsed it before, but never felt the full weight of what she'd sacrificed. Not just freedom or bodily autonomy, but an entire culture's artistic legacy. Teach him, he said firmly, whatever you remember, however fragments. Kale should know where half of him comes from. So their home curriculum expanded. Rhea introduced rhythm patterns traced in stone dust. She recreated traditional meditation poses adapted for Kale's hybrid physiology. Stories emerged, tales of star shepherds and crystal singers, beings who could read emotions in light spectrums and navigate space through harmonic resonance. Cyrus shared human lore in return. Myths that crossed cultural boundaries, flood narratives, star-crossed lovers, hero journeys. He taught practical skills, engineering principles disguised as games, basic chemistry through cooking experiments, physics demonstrated through simple machines built from salvage. They created a fusion education that prepared Kale for a universe neither parent could fully predict. Their hope was that versatility would equal survival, that knowledge itself might become armor against whatever challenges lay ahead. 3 years after Kale's birth, they received their first direct evidence that the outside world hadn't forgotten them. Not a ship this time, but a drone, a small, camouflage spy unit that lingered too long near their electromagnetic shield array. Cyrus discovered it during routine maintenance, its stealth coating partially compromised by the magnetic storms that plagued Aurelia 9. He brought it inside carefully, using Faraday principles to prevent signaling. Corporate design, he confirmed after examination. Model they use for recon before acquisition missions. Rhea's skin shaded to protective black, a stress response she often displayed when threats emerged. They still search, or are being thorough, checking old targets before closing files. The distinction felt academic. They disabled the drone's tracking capacity and repurposed its components for their own security. But the incident sparked new discussions about their long-term future. We cannot hide forever, Rhea stated plainly. Kale grows. Needs exceed our means. And hiding teaches fear. What alternative exists? Every corporation portal has biosensors. They tag you at genetic level. One scan reveals everything. Then we change everything that can be scanned. The idea was audacious, dangerous, possibly insane. But as they explored it more deeply, pieces aligned. Kale's unusual genetics already confused standard scanners. His marker profile didn't match any registered species. With careful modification, they might obscure all three identities enough to pass basic security. The process took months. They fabricated identifiers from a fictional outer colony, creating background data that painted them as refugees from conventional conflict rather than corporate fugitives. Rhea's natural skin tone could be artificially stabilized, making her appear as merely exotic rather than extraterrestrial. Kale's hybrid features, while unique, might pass as genetic drift within acceptable parameters. Cyrus's exile status was actually the easiest to obscure. He altered his facial bone structure subtly through carefully planned impacts, healing that changed just enough to confuse facial recognition without raising suspicion about surgical modification. Growing a beard helped complete the transformation. They planned their exit with the same meticulous care they'd used in hiding. The biodome would remain as a fallback position, systems set to activate with encrypted signals. If they needed to disappear again, they'd have a sanctuary waiting. On the day of departure, Cyrus powered down non-essential systems, leaving only basic maintenance active. The garden would continue its automated watering cycles. The air filtration would maintain minimal levels. If they never returned, the biodome would become a time capsule of their unusual family's brief reign. Kale watched preparations with deep interest, his 3-year-old mind processing concepts beyond his verbal ability to express. He knew. Change approached, could sense parental tension despite their efforts to shield him. "We travel now," he asked, mixing human words with harmonic undertones that conveyed emotion. "Explore new places," Rhea confirmed, adjusting his environment suit. "Find friends. Learn different ways. Come back home." The question struck both parents silent. Home. This pressurized bubble on a hostile moon had become home not through comfort or convenience, but through the life they'd built within it. The word carried weight beyond its syllables. "Always know where home is," Cyrus answered carefully, even when traveling far. They departed in a modified transport they'd pieced together from the original pod and salvage craft found scattered across Aurelia 9's surface. The vessel's profile was intentionally nondescript, its energy signature mimicking a standard mining shuttle. As the biodome shrunk below them, Kale pressed palms against the viewport, skin shifting to match the starfield beyond, his unconscious attempt to connect with the cosmos that called them forward. Rhea sat beside him, guiding his hands through ancient Zoran traveling rituals while Cyrus navigated courses that avoided major shipping lanes. Their first stop was Cerberus Station, a trading post notorious for asking few questions and hosting diverse clientele. The transition from isolated family to public exposure overwhelmed them all initially. Crowds pressed close. Multiple languages overlapped. Scents and sounds bombarded senses adapted to filtered environments. Kale clung to Rhea, his skin displaying rapid color changes until she whispered calming harmonics. Cyrus found himself unconsciously positioning between his family and potential threats. Doorways, blind corners, characters whose augmented eyes lingered too long. But they persevered. New identification passed initial scans. Their cover story: refugees from the Meridian conflicts seeking mining contracts, held under casual scrutiny. More importantly, they made contacts. The station hosted a surprising network of the displaced. Beings who'd slipped between gaps in corporate architecture found ways to exist without official sanction. A Thraken who'd lost her clan's status shared knowledge of safe houses. A human deserter from Azure mining pointed toward colonies that welcomed unofficial residents. Most revelatory was the community of other hybrids they discovered. Not like Kale, the results of his program remained unique, but children of mixed heritage from various species. Some are the products of love, others of less voluntary circumstances. All understood the particular challenges of existing between worlds. See, Rhea whispered one evening, watching Kale play with a group of mixed-species children who'd spontaneously organized a game that required no shared language. He finds his kind everywhere. 6 months passed at Cerberus Station, then a year. They found work. Cyrus's engineering skills always in demand. Rhea's quick adaptation to xenobotany opening opportunities. They leased modest quarters, nothing like the spaciousness of their biodome, but sufficient for their needs. Kale flourished in the social environment. He learned to modulate his color-changing ability, using it deliberately rather than reactively. He picked up words from dozens of languages, creating a personal pidgin that other hybrid children readily adopted. His unique perspective on problem-solving, seeing solutions that bridged different systemic approaches, marked him as gifted even in a community of exceptional beings. They lived cautiously, but not fearfully. Regular identity checks became routine, their concern diminishing as each scan returned clean results. Kale's school enrollment raised no alarms. Their small apartment became a second home, adorned with elements from both their past. Cyrus's engineering diagrams alongside Rhea's sound sculpture equipment, salvaged from her belongings before the exile. But 3 years after leaving Aurelia 9, the past returned in familiar form. Kale came home from school describing a strange woman who'd watched their family through the station's public cameras. She drew my shape, he explained, projecting his report through the haptic education device. Quiet like sneaking. Rhea's instant color shift to black alerted Cyrus before she verbalized her fear. Tracking recognition, she confirmed after reviewing the station's public feed. Same patterns as corporate surveillance teams. They prepared to run that very night. 3 years of freedom had taught them the price of complacency. But as they gathered essential items, a message appeared on their apartment's communication panel. Protocol Orange 76. Repeat. Protocol Orange 76. Cyrus froze. The code phrase belonged to his past, far past. When he'd worked for the terraforming consortium, Orange 76 meant unconventional alliance required for survival. It was used only in death trap scenarios where former enemies needed to become temporary partners. Against all logic, he responded with the corresponding code. What followed was a conversation that redefined their understanding of their situation. The woman wasn't corporate security. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez, and she'd been part of the original hybrid program, one of several scientists who'd objected to the project's ethics and subsequently been deleted from official records. I've been tracking assets who'd disappeared, she explained during a covert meeting in the station service tunnels, creating a network of the unfound. You three aren't alone. There are dozens who escaped various programs. The corporations know but won't admit failure publicly. She presented them with a choice. Continue running, hoping luck held indefinitely, or join an underground resistance that offered protection through numbers and specialized knowledge. Groups of escaped experiments, ethics-driven scientists, deserter agents, all working to dismantle the corporate systems that had used them. Kale represents something they fear. Dr. Vasquez continued. Successful hybridization without their control. Others like him exist, but scattered. Together, you could demonstrate that cooperation benefits all species, not just profit margins. The decision wasn't simple. They had found stability, built community, discovered Kale could thrive in semi-normal circumstances. Joining a resistance meant danger, but also purpose beyond personal survival. They discussed through the night, Kale sleeping between them as they weighed options. Finally, it was Rhea who spoke the truth they both recognized. "We run not just for us anymore," she said. "We run for him." But running teaches other children to be afraid. Maybe teaching fight makes better future. So they chose purpose, not returning to full hiding, but stepping into selective visibility. Working from Cerberus Station as coordinators, helping others who'd slipped through corporate cracks. Creating safe paths for the displaced. Building databases of true hybrid capabilities that could counter corporate propaganda about dangerous genetic instability. Kale grew into this reality with remarkable adaptability. By age 8, he served as a cultural bridge in the resistance network, his unique perspective helping adults from different species understand each other's strengths and overcome ingrained suspicions. His classroom experiences taught him standard galactic civics, but his after-school hours were spent learning practical resistance tactics, how to recognize surveillance patterns, communication encryption, security protocols. They trained him in precautions rather than paranoia, maintained his understanding that people were generally good, even as systems could be corrupt, celebrated that he asked questions rather than fearing authority figures, encouraged his friendships while teaching awareness that not everyone's families lived with the same considerations as theirs. Years accumulated. The biodome on Aurelia 9 became a story they sometimes told, a creation myth of their unusual family. Kale grew taller, stronger, his skin-shifting ability now fully under his control. He could mimic any color in seconds, though he preferred unique hues that proclaimed rather than concealed his identity. At age 15, Kale announced his intention to return to Aurelia 9. Not to hide, he clarified quickly when he saw their concerned expressions. To reclaim. The biodome still runs. Why let it sit empty when it could be sanctuary for others? A learning center, training ground. We built one family there, could build community. They considered his proposal seriously. The boy had become a young man capable of strategic thinking, and his idea had merit. The biodome's equipment had likely improved beyond its original specifications from their repairs and innovations. It could serve purposes aligned with their resistance work. But the greatest transformation wasn't infrastructure, it was possibility. What had been their prison-turned-refuge could become a beacon for those seeking freedom from corporate oppression. A place where the disabled weren't discarded, where experimental subjects could reclaim agency, where beings marked as non-viable could thrive. So 15 years after Cyrus Loren first carried a dying alien woman into his isolated dome, they returned as a family augmented by purpose. The facility's automated systems welcomed them with steady humming. The garden, though wild, had survived their absence. Still, root carpeted the walls in abundance. The hybrid tree planted for Kale's birth had grown massive, its canopy now spanning a third of the structure. They restored and expanded, transforming the biodome from hideaway to haven. Other resistance members joined, bringing their skills and stories. The space became a training center, a healing sanctuary, a place where the system's refugees could plan rather than merely survive. Kale took to describing himself neither as human nor Zoran, but as Aurelian, named for the moon that had sheltered his first years. The term caught on among other hybrids and displaced beings, becoming shorthand for those who transcended their origins through choice and circumstance. Years deepened into decades. Cyrus's hair grayed, engineering expertise spreading through generations of students. Rhea's music evolved into teaching method, bringing traditional Zoran practices into interspecies understanding. Kale, now a full adult, found partnership with Senna, another hybrid who'd escaped corporate custody. Together, they raised children who knew only freedom as their birthright. But the underlying tension never fully disappeared. Corporate interests occasionally probed the edges of their community, testing for weakness. Some who came seeking sanctuary proved to be infiltrators. Despite vigilance, some attempts at capture succeeded, though successful rescues often followed. What persisted was hope, reinforced by numbers, strengthened by proved connection. The narrative had shifted from corporate efficiency to questions of ethics. Public discussion emerged about the rights of engineered beings. Colonies began passing protections. Courts occasionally ruled in favor of those once labeled assets. On the 50th anniversary of Kale's birth, they gathered, an extended family now spanning generations, species, and planetary origins. The hybrid tree bloomed in celebration, its fruits containing seeds that produced offspring stronger than their parents. The biodome had grown into a compound of interconnected structures, atmosphere filtered and recycled in perfect balance with plant life. Kale stood beside the tree's massive trunk, his own children playing among its roots. I remember the story he addressed the gathering, how my birth fell between storms, how two people from different worlds chose to save what others discarded. But I think the real story isn't about saving. It's about being willing to believe in what hasn't existed yet. Cyrus caught Rhea's eye across the celebration, finding familiar warmth in her gaze. Half a century had granted them more than survival. They had built legacy not through genetics alone, but through repeated choice to choose love over fear, community over isolation, possibility over the boundaries assigned by those who would define them. Their story had become community mythology, retold by each generation with variations that added personal meaning. Children spoke of the first storm when Kale had emerged into the world, not understanding the literal truth but grasping metaphoric power. Adults whispered of Cyrus's lost love that made him initially hesitate, adding layers of redemption to his choice. Rhea's background expanded in the telling, making her story both more harrowing and more heroic. But certain elements remained constant across all versions. The woman who fell from the sky, the man who chose to catch her, and the child who bridged worlds by being born between them. Beyond the biodome, beyond Aurelia 9, the galaxy slowly shifted. Corporate power structures faced increasing challenges as their experimental subjects refused to remain hidden. Treaties emerged addressing hybrid rights, though enforcement remained inconsistent. Some worlds granted citizenship based on sentience rather than origin. Others maintained separation but recognized the futility of forced categorization. The resistance network grown from their small beginning now stretched across multiple sectors. Former test subjects became respected scientists, contributing innovations that advanced understanding of xenobiology and cross-species compatibility. Their children chose paths their parents couldn't have imagined, entering fields previously closed to beings of uncertain classification. Kale's vision had proven prophetic. Aurelia 9 did become a center of learning, though not in ways any traditional education system would recognize. Here, beings learned to code switch between biological systems as easily as languages. Engineering methods incorporated biological adaptation. Medical practices bridged species boundaries through understanding rather than cataloging differences. The biodome-turned compound maintained its original functions while expanding into new roles. Agricultural experiments produced food sources acceptable to wildly diverse physiologies. Communication technologies developed to accommodate multiple sensory channels simultaneously. Architecture adapted to various environmental needs within shared spaces. And through it all, the original family threesome aged together, their relationship deepening through weathered understanding. Cyrus discovered that love could encompass beings who saw his emotional spectrums through color rather than expression. Rhea learned that trust could be rebuilt stronger than its original design, especially when forged through shared crisis and sustained choice. They celebrated not just survival, but thriving. The garden parties incorporating dozens of cultural traditions. Joint meditation sessions where beings who breathed different atmospheres found harmony through carefully balanced environmental chambers. Holiday observances that honored both past losses and present gains, acknowledging how each shaped their collective identity. When Kale's first child was born, they repeated the ritual of tree planting. But this time, instead of a hybrid species combining two origins, they chose a completely new variety created through scientific collaboration rather than genetic accident. The sapling represented intentional development rather than desperate innovation. Years continued their forward movement. Technology evolved. Social systems adapted. Corporate structures faced increasing pressure to explain their treatment of sentient beings as experimental material. Some reformed. Others intensified their secrecy, leading to continued need for resistance networks. Through these shifts, Aurelia 9 remained constant, a pocket of intentional existence in a galaxy of programmed responses. The moon's harsh environment had softened only slightly, its storms no less frequent. But the community had learned to work with rather than against these patterns. Storm warnings triggered immediate preparations that had become second nature. Atmospheric fluctuations were tracked not as threats, but as renewable energy sources. Children born on Aurelia 9 grew up knowing only acceptance of diversity as baseline reality. To them, skin that changed color was as ordinary as hair that grew at different rates. Beings of multiple origins coexisting required no explanation. Their normal encompassed possibilities their grandparents had feared to imagine. At 70 Earth years of age, Cyrus began documenting their complete story, not as resistance propaganda or medical case study, but as testament to choices made in moments when choice seemed impossible. He wrote of the weight of carrying a dying woman across hostile terrain, translating physical struggle into emotional transformation. Rhea assisted by creating sonic sculptures that preserved Zoran oral traditions while incorporating Earth narrative structures. Together, they crafted multi-sensory archives that could be experienced by beings of various perceptual capabilities. The work consumed them happily, as they recognized their tale belonged not just to them, but to all who would come after. Kale, now middle-aged by human standards though still considered relatively young by Zor measurements, led expeditions to other attempted terraforming sites. Many had failed more dramatically than Aurelia 9, their biodomes breached and abandoned earlier in their development. But some contained salvageable technology and occasionally, to everyone's shock, surprised survivors who'd managed adaptation through desperation's innovation. Each rescue mission added to their compound's population. Each addition brought new perspectives, skills, and challenges. Some adjustment periods proved difficult, as beings accustomed to extreme isolation struggled with community living. Others adapted eagerly, having dreamed of belonging somewhere specific for years beyond memory. The arrival of Dr. Elena Vasquez's granddaughter, continuing her grandmother's work after Dr. Vasquez's eventual retirement, strengthened their medical capabilities. Her research focused on hybrid biomimicry, studying how successful cross-species offspring developed interface organs that process materials lethal to either parent species alone. The work held implications for broader xenobiological healing, potentially easing cross-species medical treatment throughout the galaxy. But beyond scientific advancement, community developed its own rhythm of existence. Morning activities included language circles where beings taught their native communication methods. Afternoons featured technical training on environmental suits and emergency protocols. Evenings brought cultural exchanges, storytelling, music creation that incorporated multiple auditory and visual spectrums. They established councils rather than centralized leadership, rotating representation to include voices of all residents. Decisions required consensus building across species perspectives, a process often frustrating but consistently rewarding. Their governance model attracted study from political theorists who saw implications for broader interstellar cooperation. As Cyrus approached his 80th year, health limitations finally slowed his activities. Rhea, whose Zoran physiology aged differently, remained vibrant though now wearing the cultural markings of an elder. She spent increasing time with the younger generations, teaching them how to read environmental shifts through subtle changes in plant behavior, how to maintain equipment through understanding rather than procedural memorization. Kale's children had children of their own, creating a third generation fully native to Aurelia 9. These newest arrivals knew their family story as foundational myth, understanding that their existence proved possibilities previously deemed impossible. They asked questions their grandparents had never dared consider, pushing boundaries of what hybrid beings might accomplish given full opportunity rather than constrained existence. One evening, as binary sunset painted the biodome's transparent walls in impossible colors, Cyrus found himself exactly where he'd been 52 years earlier, scanning distant signals, watching for any sign of incoming ships. But this time, he hoped for contact rather than fearing it. Their community had grown strong enough to welcome genuine alliance while remaining capable of defending against exploitation. Rhea had joined him on the observation platform, settling beside him with familiar ease. Their skin had different textures now, aged by years of Aurelia 9's filtered atmosphere rather than the environmental conditions of their birth worlds. But their hands still fit together naturally, shaped by shared experience rather than physical compatibility alone. "Remember when you almost left me in that pod?" she asked, knowing the answer but enjoying their ritual of remembrance. "Remember when you almost died giving birth in my barely functional medical bay?" he countered with matching playfulness. They laughed quietly, aware of how close those early moments had teetered between disaster and miracle. Their survival had required luck, determination, and most crucially, the willingness to risk caring again after being hurt by caring too much. Below them, Kale's youngest grandchild played beneath the hybrid tree, his skin showing colors that had never existed in nature until his bloodline created them. His laughter carried upward, mixing with the biodome's environmental hum to create a music unique to their sanctuary. "Do you think," Rhea mused, "if given choice again, you would still pull me from that pod?" Cyrus considered carefully. The question held weight beyond hypothetical musing. Their choices had created consequences spanning generations, affecting lives they'd never anticipated. The responsibility of becoming a catalyst for so much change might overwhelm many who tried to shoulder it alone. "I could not," he answered finally, even knowing everything that followed. Because watching someone die when you might save them changes you regardless. At least this change brought life instead of haunting. And now I'm grateful for consequences beyond imagination, for family expanding past bloodlines, for community built through choice persistence. Aurelia 9's storms rolled across the darkening landscape, lightning crackling between atmospheric layers with predictable irregularity. Once, those displays had represented chaos and threat. Now they provided energy for their systems, beauty for their evenings, rhythm for their lives. The compound thrived, not because it was immune to challenges, but because it had evolved systems to incorporate them. Member disputes were addressed through restoration circles borrowed from Zoran tradition, but modified for multi-species needs. Resource allocation required constant adjustment, as different beings required specific environmental supplements. Education meant creating pathways that worked across diverse cognitive processing styles. Still, the work continued, bringing satisfaction. Each morning found beings choosing to remain, to contribute, to build something larger than individual survival. Each evening closed with beings choosing to trust their safety to others, to rest in spaces designed for various comfort needs, but sharing underlying infrastructure. Their story continued writing itself, through living rather than recording alone. Cyrus's detailed archives would preserve facts, but daily existence created meaning through accumulation of small kindnesses, shared struggles overcome, celebrations that honored differences while affirming connection. Eventually, Cyrus's documentation project reached natural completion. The archives included technical specifications of their survival adaptations, cultural exchange records showing how different traditions merged into new practices, medical data proving hybrid vitality exceeded both parent species baselines. But the chronicle that would matter most was the simplest: beings who were told they couldn't exist, flourishing because others chose to believe they could. On the eve of his 85th birthday, Cyrus received an unexpected message. Corporate channels carried official acknowledgement of hybrid being status, granting citizenship rights across core worlds. The change came not through military pressure or legal battles alone, but because compounds like theirs had proven sustainable existence possible. Numbers ultimately convinced where individual pleas had failed. That night, they held their largest celebration yet. Beings from dozens of worlds, gathered physically or through holographic connection, united in acknowledging what had begun with one man choosing to save one woman and her unborn child. Speeches ran long, translated through multiple languages and sensory modalities. Musicians collaborated across species boundaries to create harmonies previously thought impossible. As festivities peaked, Kale invited his aging parents to join him beneath the ancient hybrid tree for their family's traditional closing ceremony. His children and grandchildren arranged themselves in concentric circles, youngest at the center, eldest at the edges, a visual representation of expanding influence radiating outward from core origins. "We gather here," Kale began the ritual, "where storms brought strangers together, where choice created family, where family built community, where community demonstrated possibility." Cyrus and Rhea stood together in the position of honor, hand in hand as they'd been through their most pivotal moments. Around them, beings of countless origins raised voices in whatever form their species used for expressing gratitude: songs, harmonics, bioluminescence, pheromone clouds, electromagnetic pulses. The hybrid tree responded as it always did to strong emotional presence, leaves shifting through color spectrums that encompassed all its seedlings' heritage. Fruit formed and dropped, containing seeds stronger than their parents, ready to carry legacy forward through whatever soil they found. And as Aurelia 9's twin moons rose over the horizon, painting Biodome's exterior in silver and gold, those gathered understood they celebrated more than survival. They honored transformation, of individuals who refused to accept prescribed limitations, of communities built through inclusive expansion rather than exclusive separation, of a universe proven capable of containing more possibilities than any single species could imagine alone. The woman who fell from the stars became part of Aurelian folklore, her story growing with each telling while retaining essential truth. Sometimes salvation arrives through our willingness to catch what others have discarded, to choose connection over isolation, to believe that what seems broken might yet become whole in ways we cannot foresee, but must be willing to nurture into existence. And on a forgotten moon, circling a distant star, beneath domes of transparent strength and rooted gardens of hybrid vitality, beings who began as strangers to each other continued weaving tapestries of belonging that would outlast their individual threads, creating patterns of possibility that would light paths for generations yet to come. In the archives Cyrus Loren had compiled, the last entry read simply, "We are here because we chose each other again and again, in moments when choice seemed limited to fear alone." May those who find these records understand that survival is merely the beginning of what becomes possible when beings refuse to remain strangers to one another's hopes. The biodome hummed with life, a pocket of intentional existence carrying forward through time's current, its story still being written by all who called it home. Outside, Aurelia 9's storms continued their eternal dance. Inside, three hearts that had first beaten in desperate synchronization now pulsed in comfortable rhythm with countless others, creating music from the harmony of beings who had learned that family encompasses whoever you choose to save, whoever you choose to trust, whoever you choose to become.